Hello, it's Einar at Unity Center. Today we're going to have a second interview with Raphael Kleiman. And this time we're going to talk about spiritual ecology. Ecology. Okay. And that's spirit in nature. Isn't that what you want to talk about?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I was one example, just to know what we're talking about, from Iceland. They are very good at taking care of the small people, the people we don't see, elves and things like that. And they even had, I don't know if they have it anymore, but they had a minister that was, they had to talk with some kind of healer to build a new road. They have to get permission from the energy people living at the roadside. So sometimes they have to make the road around energy places because of these energy people living there. So that's what a little bit about the essence about what we're going to talk about now. So Raphael, it's lots of new things coming up around this. Can I talk a little bit about what's new?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, when you say this, that nature spirits are an integral part of Icelandic politics or building projects or road making, then you see it's something that is not new. I mean, it's always been like that.
Yes.
When the Vikings came to Iceland, of course, the Viking ship was always full of fire spirits, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to go so fast. They would call it a dragon because their imagination was that it's an elementary powerful being that is driving these boats. It was so natural for old peoples, or ask any shaman in Siberia or in the jungle or whatever. They all know about nature as full of living invisible beings, and they would relate to it. So why am I saying that this is something new? Well, my point is that we have come back to a point where we can talk about this and still be modern people. For some centuries you could say that human consciousness has split. There were those people who would become intellectual and scientific and modern, and there were other parts of the populations that were traditional, that had shamanistic consciousness, and at the same time, some 100 years ago, you would have the Sami in northern Norway, who would all the time communicate with nature spirits, and you would have the Protestant priest who would say, you don't believe in this, and who would stick to the word of the scripture and of the laws and so forth. And now we've come to a point where these worlds can meet again, because on the one hand we have quantum physics that tells us that matter is not what we thought it to be. It is a form of energy, and our consciousness has come to the point where we see that we are also part of the experiments. We are influencing with our consciousness. And our sense of self and our sense of freedom, our self-reflection, have come to a point where we are waking up to a much higher degree of self-responsibility than before. You and I and we today, we don't accept any longer that somebody tells us, it's always been like that, and Mama has said so, and the priest says, and the Prime Minister says. No, we don't believe that. We want to understand. And so our consciousness is so developed that we can now look at nature in a new way. And when we look really carefully at nature, we see that it's not just matter, but behind matter is energy. If you train yourself a little bit just with your hand or with a pendulum or a dowsing rod or so, you will see there's energy, and it changes. You go through some places and you see here is an energy spot. Here the energy is sucking into the earth. Here the energy is bubbling up right? It's all energy. It's invisible, but you can sense it in your body. You place yourself here and you feel how your energy is being drained. You're being washed. You go here and you feel how the energy is rising, and you're getting new energy. You have female spots and male spots, and you have resonances with your chakra system. You're realizing that the living earth is built, so to say, in the same way as a human organism. It has the same chakras, just placed in different ways. It has the same energy systems. It has energy lines, meridians, so to say. And it is built in a way that it's always built of small building blocks, who then form bigger building unities, who then form bigger unities. It's a holon principle. So like from a little room, like here, in every room you have different chakras, and you have a male point and a female point. But then this room is part of house, and the house has a structure which has certain chakras and certain energy points. And then the house is part of a city, and the city of Oslo has a main heart chakra and a main root chakra, and so on. And Oslo is part of Norway, and Norway is part of Europe, and the Europe is part of the whole earth, which again has one main heart chakra and different chakras and different energy points. So it's all like in our body. You have the cell, and you have bigger organs, and then you have the whole of it. So realizing that we are part of a living system, and our consciousness is held in this bigger picture. And I'm sensing that, from my experience, as you know, I'm a therapist and healer, and I'm witnessing very much changes in consciousness with people. And in so many people, this experience is awakening that we are part of a bigger picture, and we should take care of Earth in a totally different way. And that's where energy psychology, energy medicine come in. But my experience is that energy medicine is now turning into something new and more extended, because let's say 10-20 years ago, Donna Eden, for example, would say energy is all there is. Energy medicine is really behind the physical medicine, and if you can harmonize energy, then you can help people to heal and self-heal. And that's true, and the same is true for energy psychology. But now we're realizing that behind energy is something else. Behind energy is being. And just like you are having an energy body, and of course I could do some healing on you, and you would sense something, and something is changing and so forth. But why do you have an energy body? Because you're a being. The energy body wouldn't be there, your aura wouldn't be there, if you were not in the center. And the way you are thinking and talking influences your energy body. And what I'm trying to tell people is that just think of nature in the same way. You're feeling energy, you're feeling earth radiation and so forth. But why? Because it's beings. And you can with the dowsing rod, you can see that something is flowing, something is moving, you can feel the body resonance. But please don't think of it just as an object, as something out there, but address it as in a form of dialogue, just like we are communicating in a dialogue. Have really the interest for the living earth with all its organs and beings.
But what should we, in practicality, what should we do then?
Depends on what we are
especially
talking
when we
about.
are building things.
Yeah, for example, that's a nice example. I have a friend, he died a year ago, but he was one of the co-founders of the first ecological bank in Germany. And he later founded the collective association of the alternative banks on a global scale. And he would organize a conference every year about alternative banking and ecological banking. And what was his big issue for the last years of his life was what he called for extended shareholder consciousness. He had been part of so many social building projects and ecological building projects, and find beautiful ways of financing these things and making nice social processes, how a community of people can build, let's say, a school or something in a good way, in a creative way. But then he said, that's not enough. We need not only a social shareholder consciousness, we also need a spiritual ecological shareholder consciousness. We need to communicate with these nature spirits in that place where we're building, because they are the carrier of the consciousness. They know the place. They have been there for centuries, and they know what's good here, and they can help us to build a building in a way that really suits the place. And once it's built, they can help the people who are living there, the community, to sustain it, to have good social processes, to have a good inner development. There's an immense potential for inner development once we don't think of here my inner development or here extend my meditative space here, but have it all around me, and realize that if I connect to the forest around that school that we're building, if I connect to the river that's flowing along there, I will meet a source of inspiration that can help us to solve the social challenges that we can have with each other, because these beings, they understand us and they can inspire us, and they always also have this immense interest for us, because it's only we humans who have freedom. So we are very interesting to to look at from the perspective of nature spirits who have immense wisdom, but not freedom.
Are they also in town or only in the nature?
Oh, of course, yes. Yeah. I mean, in a certain way, you have very high energies in cities. Of course, sometimes on the level of life energy, you're a little depleted. You have not enough trees and so forth, and so the parks are very important to maintain a certain vitality, or the rivers are very important. Look here at Oslo, where some people have done a marvelous job in getting the rivers out of the ground and open into the air again, where the sun can charge them with energy and so forth. So Oslo has become a much better place to live in the past years and decades. But yes, I mean, sometimes cities are a little low in vitality because of all the cars and the radiation and so forth. But on other levels of more conscious energy, they are really peak in the landscape. And there's a very high spiritual beings connected to cities, often angel beings, landscape angels, who have their focus on certain points in the city.
In Oslo, we have lots of building here now, so we should really contact these angels to get some help or something.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, but that is also a social question, because each of us has a guardian angel, and our angel is carrying that part of my consciousness that I'm not able to carry yet. I mean, we have consciousness, we have subconsciousness, many things that maybe we don't want to look at, or that come from somewhere where we haven't dared to put the light of our consciousness. But we also have superconsciousness. We have parts of our consciousness which we don't use in everyday life, but they are there. And in a process of inner development, we can integrate them more and more. But until that point in time, the angel is the carrier of my superconsciousness. So the angel is the one, for example, that guides my path, so that by accident, by chance, I meet the right person, which I have to meet in order to, build something together, or my partner. What was happening, so that we met exactly in the right point. That's the angel, or both angels who are helping us. And so we have on an individual basis, we have the personal angel, the guardian angel. But then we also have even higher beings of category angels, so to say. The archangels, for example, they are social angels. You usually you don't meet an archangel like one by one, but you meet an archangel when you, as a group of people, make a vessel. When you, in a social process, come to that quality where a group of people is able to be, so to say, an ear or a listening organ, and really to allow inspiration to come in, right? When that happens, and that happens sometimes to good communities, when they're having a good spiritual goal or so, then that can happen. And then this group makes a vessel, and the archangel can inspire that group of people. And there's even higher angelic realms, and they also then form the cities and the bigger communities, all the way up to a nation.
Is there any? I'm very simple. Is there any way you? In the other interview, we were talking about all these new equipment, scientific things. You can measure things. Can you really measure these other energies working out there for us?
You can measure to a certain degree energies, but not the being behind. And I think that's good that we cannot.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been, for example, in the 1920s, some famous photographies in the United Kingdom where supposedly some elves were showing up on these photo plates. And it's still kind of discussed, was it all fake or not? The people who made it said, the first one were original, but then they had so much success with them, then they faked the other ones. So who knows? But in any case, if they were right, I still think it's not the point. It's not the point to make a photograph of an angel or of nature spirits. The whole point is that we meet them with an inner consciousness, not with an outer objectivity, because that's the whole point in the evolution of consciousness, that we are kind of turning inward and taking self-responsibility for our consciousness. And only when we are ready to do that, we are at a point where we are ready to meet spiritual beings, both the angelic beings and the earth spirits. So I don't think they should ever be a proof, so to say, that here is a leprechaun or here is a nissa or whatever. You have to experience it yourself, and you should have that inner freedom to see it or not to see it.
But today we have a problem with the in Norway you have this everything has to be proven scientifically if you're going to believe it. So most people don't believe in elves and energy in the river and in the trees and so on.
Which is funny in a way. Sorry, just a little remark there. Which in a way it's funny, as you know, I come from Germany, and many Germans are like looking up to Norway, and it's kind of, for them it's a dream country with so strong nature, and many Germans come and have the holidays here. And then the funny thing is that in Norway, on the one hand, you still you have some old knowledge, some old tradition with regard to the nature spirits. You have fairy tales that are so powerful talking about nature spirits, and you have the Sami who have rituals and knowledge about them. But then it seems like the Norwegian, it's like, oh no, we don't talk about this. It's something that you don't. I mean, that's fairy tale, that's mythology. We are modern. Whereas in Germany, spiritual ecology, earth radiation, geomancy has become very much part of mainstream culture. You see very normal people doing their normal jobs and so forth. They have accepted those phenomena. So it's kind of coming up, but it's coming up in a new way. You know, it's as if we first had to lose it, and then we can rediscover it. And in Norway, most people, so to say, haven't lost it yet, or they just have lost it, so they're not ready to rediscover it.
Yeah, okay. That was a good one. Okay, we can market your. It's another workshop you have interest in July, 3rd and 14th of July. It's a summer weekend for spiritual ecology.
Spiritual ecology.
Spiritual ecology. Do you want to say anything about this?
Sure.
Meløy?
Meløy, yes.
Where's that?
Well, that's above the Arctic Circle, just below Lofoten.
It's 2 weeks,
Yes.
almost 2 weeks.
Yes.
What's going to happen there?
Well, that's sets, so to say, a training camp in spiritual communication with nature. And we've done that already 2 summers now, and it's been a fantastic success with course teachers from different countries and participants for many European countries. And the idea is to have that rest in the Norwegian summer, where you have so much light and it's so relaxing and so powerful nature, and to have people who have developed different methods in inner communication with nature. So we don't say, this is the way you do it or this, but we invite different people who then also get very interested in what the other one is doing. So it's a dialogical process, and we go out in nature and observe, how is that tree growing, and when you observe more deeply and deeply how the tree is growing, you are gradually sensing that it was the energy around the tree who was making that particular form of the tree, and you can start to see and sense that energy, and then you start to make yet another step and see, well, that energy is actually the expression of beings, and then you start to speak to the tree and to listen to the tree and to come into an inner dialogue, and that's where we want to get an inner dialogue with a tree, with a mountain, with a valley, with the wholeness of a landscape. That's when we feel we come into a deeper place where we can feel at home again in nature. And we've done that 1 year pretty close to Oslo, and then the second year in the high mountains in Jotunheimen, in the giant's home of the high mountains in Norway, with very powerful beings, including trolls and giants and so forth. And now we push the borders even more. We go to the Arctic region, where we have midnight sun, so the sun is there day and night, and we will be totally bathed in this sunlight and have very strong elements, because we are out in the ocean, and we have glaciers and mountains and different landscapes to work with.
How do you sign up here then?
Well, you just find the either on Facebook, or there's a specific website, summerweek.baldron.org.
But if I go, just do it very easy. You go into baldron.org.
You can find it also. Yes, just baldron.org.
Baldron.org.
Yes. Or on Facebook. Yeah, Baldron.
Yeah, just to remind you, Baldron has been for many years, and they're working very much on mobile phone radiation and try to protect you from radiation and things like that.
Yeah, in a way that is the other side. I mean, it's interesting that you bring this up, because for many years we've been working with that part of ecology, the invisible environmental pollution from radiation, and it looks so clean in a way, but it's so dirty, and it's affecting people's health so strongly, and not only people's but also the trees. I could show you so many examples also here in Oslo, where a mobile mast has attacked trees so strongly that even the crown is moving, and you see how the leaves are affected. The leaves are antennas, especially with needle trees. You see, if they have the right length, then the wavelength of the radiation is being picked up, just like with an antenna, and then the tree is suffering, you know. And so for many years we've been working consulting work, helping people to protect themselves and raising consciousness about radiation. But in a way we've realized that there's at least something good about the mobile radiation problem, and that is that everybody today understands that our body in essence really is invisible. I mean that yes, we're having a body here, but we get affected here out in the aura. It's the radiation affects us in the invisible parts of our body, and that is so much stronger than the physical body. So in a way you could say that mobile radiation has taught us that we get more aware of the invisible, of the spiritual parts of ourselves, and now I think we have to do the next step and also realize and communicate with the invisible part of the earth, and that's what we're doing with spiritual ecology.
Fantastic. Okay, Raphael, I can just press a button here and you talk for hours.
But you can press the off button as well, so I'll stop that.
Okay, but you can have 1 minute just to end. Tell something you burn for to tell the people. You get 1 minute to just a last.
Okay.
What do you want to tell people on the earth?
Well, take care of the earth as a living being, and have the courage to come into a dialogue. It's really a matter of courage to not stay with this spectator consciousness where everything is kind of outside of yourself, and then you read scientific reports then tell you to believe in this and that, and you stay in this outside world, but dare to jump into your own experience, and you will discover that life gets so much more colorful, both in the human relations. When you really train dialogue, you realize that every human being is so interesting. You just have to listen to it, but also with regard to nature. Then every tree and every plant and the light itself, everything starts to speak, and it's beautiful. We are logos beings. We are beings of speech and of listening, and we just have to extend that from the human sphere also to nature. Thank you.
Then you have something to think about. Thank you very much, Raphael.
Thank you, Anna.